This is going to be a fun one.
I know. Oh my gosh. Let me talk to my general chat. How do I send the group a link? To my supporting listeners group. Yeah, to the Praxis guys, because you did that to get us in. And
how do we send the
how do I share
link
a
to
link to you
YouTube?
guys? No, to you guys. So I can get you guys into my Subscribe Star thing. Because I had a really, really good talk today about the anti-tax behind the scenes, where my group of power brokers was that's one of my levels, is the power broker elites. And they were asking me questions about how it was going to do certain things and why it was going to work, and like how I'm going to get around this or that or the third. And I explained everything to them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And you guys are going to get like the full thing, because I'm like 75% of the way through turning that long document. There was like 13 pages of an outline, that I sent to you and to Pete. I'm like 75% of the way through turning that into a really professional looking presentation. And
excellent.
I'm going to give that to the entire group and lay the whole thing out, so you don't just have to read it and kind of you can understand where I'm going with it. But
nice.
But yeah, you guys will get the whole thing. But I wanted to send you guys a link, but I don't know how to do that. I've been looking for it.
So if you're to send an invite, go to, once you're in Discord, just like swipe the left side of the screen open, and there's right up at the top, there should be an invite button. And if you hit invite, then it should give you a copy link button. That's what I did.
Okay, here I see it. Yeah.
And then that should just automatically get them in there.
Let's see.
So we were sitting here this just a little bit just before we went live. We were sitting here trying to come up with the title based on the angle that we're wanting to go with the show today. And we were like, tried one thing, no, that's not quite right. And then we tried another, no, that's not it either. Because the way I like to use the title of the show is, I try to use get a little clickbaity, as you guys are well aware, and then I also use it as a guide point, like a way to remind me of what the subject is, remind me of the angle that I'm taking. Because I will periodically throughout the show, I've said this before, I'll just my brain will just wipe itself, reset. It's like a hard reboot in the middle of a sentence. And I need to be able to have something I can look to real quick and be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what we're talking about.
It's like, so I just went on a 15-minute rant about something and it's not quite real. Oh yeah, now back to where I was yet there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh yeah, all of that is now related to this. This one little point I was making before I went on a segue, or not segue. What was it? Detour, long detour.
A terwilliger. That's one of my favorite words. I used to. Not a lot of people have heard it.
No, I haven't.
Terwilliger. Yeah, Terwilliger. I think. And it's a word that my mom always used when I was growing up.
Thanks, Siri.
Did Siri recognize it?
Nope. Oh yeah,
come on, Siri.
Kind of. No, she's a bitch. She's being a bitch right now.
Basically, just like, if you're out driving around one day and you're just like, hey, I wonder where this road goes, and you just take a jaunt off down the road and wander along, not really going anywhere, without a destination, just driving for the hell of it. That's basically a terwilliger.
Huh, okay. Yeah, I've done that. I like doing that.
I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, that's great. You can do the it's like you always find out so many like interesting and pretty places that way. I don't mean to be like, pretty. Like, no, I mean like actually like stunning nature,
Yeah. I'm very much a I love to read maps. I love to like, whenever we're going to move to a new place. So we're talking about very likely moving to Texas. And so I've been doing a lot of I'll just sit down and I'll just look at the map, and I'll just kind of like drive along roads in my head and scope out the different neighborhoods. Sometimes I'll even use Google Maps, and I'll just sit down and I'll just drive through a town using Google Maps. So anytime that we're looking at a new place, I'll go find the place on Zillow or Craigslist or apartments.com or whatever. And then I'll look up the address on Google Maps, and then I'll go drive around the neighborhood and get a feel for it. So every time we've moved somewhere, by the time we got there, I already knew where just about everything was in the town, or at least knew where to go to try to find it because I'd driven through it so many times in my head. So yeah, so all of that kind of thing is
that's impressive.
Very fun to me. Yeah. I was going to ask you. This is not at all related to the show today, but you'd mentioned in the past that you had like some understanding or familiarity with MBTI, with Myers-Briggs, or like Jungian cognitive functions. How familiar with it are you? Is it like passing familiarity? Very nice. Okay. I want to. I
was obsessed with it for a long time, but
okay. Did you stick to just like the letter dichotomies, or did you get into the cognitive functions?
Like introverted intuition and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like once I understood that cognitive, like, oh, that's so me. God damn it. It's like they nailed me with that one.
You're an ENTJ?
INTJ.
INTJ. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
INTJA, assertive. So
okay. Yeah. I have it's something I've been interested. So I'll say this first of all, for anybody who isn't familiar or is just has the wrong kind of familiarity with it. There's Myers-Briggs, there's like MBTI, like the letter dichotomies, and then there's cognitive functions. There's the actual Jungian like depth psychology science basis to it. And the difference there is like a horoscope and astrology. Or really, it's not even a horoscope and astrology; it's a horoscope and astronomy, because there's a legitimate to the extent that you can get into the cognitive realm and have objective analysis. This is about as far as you can possibly go, because there's a degree to which as soon as you're getting into people's cognition and that sort of thing, it's like by definition it's all subjective because you're based entirely on self-reporting.
Yeah, that's the problem with it.
Right. So this is as scientific as it can get. Too. Yeah. So
how well do you know yourself? That's the question. That's the issue. If you don't know yourself very well.
Yeah. And it can be, for some people, it can be a way for them to understand themselves better. Like for me, I have very little self-awareness, I guess. Someone's going to clip that out and use that. I have very little, I don't have a really solid individual personality. I can kind of adapt my personality to any circumstance, to any social group or any environment. I have a very moldable, adaptable personality.
ENTJ?
ESTP.
Okay.
So I thought for a very long time that I was an ENTJ. I've thought for forever, for a long time, I thought I was an ENTP. I've gone through INFJ, INTJ, but all of them were all NT types. I'd never even considered that I might not be an intuitive type.
I don't know. You do seem like an intuitive thinker.
I'm 100% an ESTP. It's the most like when I happened upon ENTJ, when I first thought of it, that connection was made for me. I was like, wow, that's true. Oh man, that's very much like me, because the ESTJ and ENTJ have a lot of overlap. They're one of the most common mistypings.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that gives me some thought. This kind of gives me some direction. I can better understand myself now. But there was stuff that just wasn't quite right. There's stuff that just really didn't fit. And when I won't go through the whole thing right now, but when the ESTP thing hit, when that clicked for me, it was like a fucking bomb going off inside my head. Every single data point in my entire life makes sense to me now.
Oh, okay.
I had for a long time basically had like 4 or 5 different lives, kind of, where it seemed like I was a different person and had different values and behaved differently and valued different. Like everything was different. And so this is why I'm trying to like, okay, well, who am I? What is my, what are my values? What's my behavior? How do I think about things? How do like all of these thoughts, when I would try to think about them, I'm like, I have no fucking idea. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to like bounce the ideas off of that could like, give me feedback on it. So I'm just kind of stuck here in my own head, just going over this stuff over and over and over again. And once the ESTP thing clicked for me, every single thing just snapped perfectly into view, and I understood it completely. And I had like, this is the best part of it. This is why I'm very passionate about it. Is as soon as that clicked for me, suddenly I knew exactly what I need to do. Suddenly I knew exactly where I needed to be, what I needed to do, and where I was going. All of it just snapped perfectly into view for me as soon as that one data point clicked. So I know for a lot of people, they don't have that same experience, but for the ones who do, those are the people I'm interested in. Those are the people I want to hear from, and I want to see how we can use something like this to help other people. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, it's also, it helped me because I used to struggle to understand how other people's cognitive brains worked because, INTJ just, sorry, the rest of y'all were Greek to me for a very, very long time. And, and then it's like once I started to understand, oh, these are the ways they're taking in information. It's like now I have a system for this thing, and now I can understand everything. And and just understanding, okay, these order of operations is how they're doing. Okay, is it an information function that they have first, or is it an action function that they have first? And these are which one is it? And now I kind of get, I understand how everyone else is thinking now, and I can kind of do that in my brain, and that's it's really helped me a lot in my social life. Trying to be more sociable with people and understanding, okay, this is when are they following me, and when are they like when are they not, and when I'm explaining stuff to them or something like that, or when they're explaining stuff to me, what's it coming like from their point of view, how are they seeing this, like learn to see the world through other people's eyes, so to speak. And
that's so fascinating. So you had almost the exact opposite experience,
kind of,
which is interesting because our dominant function
completely introverted. It's completely exactly different except for the thinking part.
Yeah.
So you're a thinker, I'm a thinker, but that's about it.
Well, yeah, but you lead. So you lead with introverted intuition. That's your dominant function.
Extroverted thinking is second.
Yeah. So then your fourth function, which is on the same axis with the first one, is extroverted sensing. That's my lead function. So you and this is part of how I really came to understand this is people talk about these in terms of priority, that like this one's stronger or more conscious or something like that. The first and the fourth, and it's not that. It's the fourth is what you're being drawn toward. The fourth is what's pulling you. It's the gravity that's pulling you forward, that you're obsessed with, that you're thinking about all the time.
Yeah.
The first function is the one that's so innate to you that it's not even conscious. You don't even think about it. You don't even realize it. You don't even recognize it. And that's what it was for me. I didn't even know it was there. I didn't know that this extroverted sensing. So like being like perpetually in the moment, very obsessed with details, very action oriented, all about experiences, trying to accumulate as many experiences, as much data as possible, but like not really rigorous with all of it. Because I very rarely finish a book. I get the idea and I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. And then I get the idea, okay, on to the next thing.
Introverted intuition is your last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is that, that's what I thought.
So I have a ton of anxiety about the future. I don't have that really clear, crystal clear vision of the future. I have a lot of I'm obsessed with the future. I'm obsessed with trying to create the future, and not in a healthy way. It's something that is it's
leave it to an expert.
About me. Yeah. So that's why you and I actually have connected so well, because this is going to sound weird. We feed each other's dominant functions.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I put all the information out there and you take it and you turn it into a story.
And that was, and I noticed this with myself. That's like, okay, the really small day-to-day things, minutia, it's like I'm terrible at this. This is why it's taken me so long to get this paperwork thing off the ground with Mises GOP, because it's this is literally the worst nightmare for me. Is I have to jump through a whole bunch of bureaucratic hoops, and boy are they making me jump through all these bureaucratic hoops. And it's I got one email back today. It's like, okay, you filed 3 forms, a week ago. We're finally going to get back to you now that one of your forms has a field that is incorrect, and you need to redo the whole thing and FedEx it back to us with a new cover letter. And it's like this is this is my Achilles heel of because this is a purely an extroverted sensing sort of thing that. Thankfully I have a lawyer father who's able to take care of it for me some of the time. As this is the sort of thing he does for a living and enjoys. ISTJ for a father. Wonderful.
The introverted sensing, all of that minute detail, and yeah.
So it's like that, that one's not even not, like the sort of thing that would really do well, like introverted sensing, that would do real well for that. I don't even have it at all. It's not even in the stack. And
it's your demon function. It's your eighth function in the shadow.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And so this is like my worst night. I'm not having to go through hell to get this thing up and running in one state. And but I know, like, okay, this is my Achilles heel. Let me find somebody else who can do this for me and, kind of, help me get through this. And I see this with my wife too. Same thing. I deliberately married an ISTJ woman because I knew, what was the, what I needed to,
very dependable.
Yeah.
And very detail oriented.
Very detail oriented too. And she's good at like the paperwork and calling up the bureaucrats. And it's like with like the health insurance shit, whenever that comes up, she's good at calling them. And I just like,
that's Amy too. That's Amy. I think Amy's an ISTJ and she's the exact same way.
Oh yeah. We'd probably get along great then. But yeah, it's like, it's like the sort of person, like, I cannot possibly live without you. How would I do it? It's like, I could barely tie my shoes in the morning, but yeah, it's like for anyone who hasn't done that, it's like, usually if you get it right, because again, it's a question of how well do you know yourself. Once you really get it right, you'll start understanding, like, this really helps out, and for me as INTJ, I learned in college. And immediately I'm like, okay, this is 100% correct. I know exactly that this is it. And, and it had like down to like, oh, you probably struggle with, being too rational and sociable, when you're socializing and when you're just trying to tell them, how the system works, detail oriented, and they start getting pissed at you. It's like, you don't really know why. It's like, yeah, that happens. But I learned to get over that. It's like How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book's like saved my life and so saved my social life. So
yeah.
I learned stop doing that, Andrew. They don't want advice. They just want you to listen to them and just ask questions that get them. And so anyway, so on to
for anybody who's listening, if you've taken a test, then like if you've gone online and just taken one of the tests, then you haven't been exposed to what's actually going on. The tests are basically bullshit. There are certain types that the tests will pretty reliably return the right results, sort of, but it's very much kind of like 50-50. So for most people, if you've taken a test, because the tests test behavior. They don't test cognition. And this isn't a personality type. This isn't a behavioral test. It's a cognition test. It's how you take in information and how you process that information. So if you're interested, there's one guy that I know that has a really, really, really good test because he started with the cognitive functions, with a really in-depth understanding of the cognitive functions, and he reverse engineered the test back from there. And so it's very much he's got several different dichotomies that are present in it that you can pretty reliably nail someone down by getting. It's like, I think there's 8 different dichotomies in it, maybe. And if you get like 3 of them,
so yeah.
And if you get like 3 of them, then it automatically solves for the rest of them. So his test is phenomenal. So if you're interested in that, then just reach out to me and I'll connect you with him.
Very, very helpful. Also helpful if you want to understand how other people are processing information and what they're going to do about it.
Because if you can learn, once you understand how it works, you could tell from people's speech patterns, the way they're thinking, because their speech pattern relays what's going on inside their head. So for me, I'm a dominant extroverted sensor, just for the hell of it, which means if you listen to me talk, you're going to hear me talking about things. You're going to hear me talking about facts and details. And it's going to be very forceful, and it's typically going to be fairly focused. It's not going to be super harebrained all the time. If it's super harebrained, then it's usually not going to be very good. When it's good, it's going to be very focused, talking fast. These are all characteristics of it. So someone who is listening to me would be able that knew what they were doing would be able to say, "Oh yeah, he's definitely extroverted sensing." And if they listen to me long enough, they probably pick up on the extroverted feeling and introverted thinking as well as the introverted intuition in the broad overview. All these different things are apparent in people's speech patterns. So if you can master this, if you can understand it well enough, you can master it, then it can help you understand where other people are coming from, how they're thinking, what they value. So then you can provide them what they're looking for without them having to ask for it. And that's an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, that's the most important part, is learning what other people need, in order to give you what you want, what you want.
Right.
And segue right into where we actually, let's take another detour. That was a perfect segue. Now let's detour.
I do have to detour because I have to tell you guys about our beloved sponsor, Paloma Verde CBD. Hey, look who it is, just in time. There we go. Christian College 5th year senior Steve. I've got 2 Steves here today.
Oh, am I on?
All right.
You're on. Watching.
Yeah,
I thought I was just watching you guys. You guys keep going. I'll just be here.
We're about to talk about your best friends. PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Our delightful friends, Carlos and Vanessa. You guys know them. You guys have been listening to the show long enough. You guys know them. Very good people. They've got a fantastic product. If you don't already use CBD, consume CBD, take CBD, whatever the way you whatever role CBD has in your life, they're there for you. They've got tinctures, they've got muscle rubs, they've got my favorite is the gummies. The gummies are just green apple and strawberry lemonade. They've got a tincture. I don't remember if I said that. And they've got pet treats too. So they've got all the stuff that you could possibly need, anything CBD oriented. So go to PalomaVerdeCBD.com and use promo code KING. That's PalomaVerdeCBD.com and use promo code KING. Now, if you, per chance, if you want to give them an extra 20% donation on top of their already very reasonable prices, then use promo code POPULAR. That will give them a 20% tip above and beyond your order.
If you want to see Matt stuffed into the back of a trunk and shipped off to very quickly to Texas, use promo code KEG, because that will fund that operation to physically remove Matt from California and have his point. And he will be transported in a trunk. We will make sure he has air and somewhere to pee, and we will physically remove him from California to a safer location somewhere in parts unknown Texas. Amy and baby will be given a nice front seat car, or the baby will be in the back seat in a chair, and a little baby car seat. But they'll get the nice treatment. But but we had to save money, so we're going to be putting Matt in the truck.
I'm still thinking about where I'm going to comfortably pee. Is this going to be like catheter through a hole in the floor and?
Well, I mean, it's like we really had to cut money. So,
what's up, Steve? How's it going?
I'm good. I just heard one of the funniest things maybe of ever.
What's that?
I just heard the term COVID thick. I've never heard it before. But
COVID thick?
I
love that I know exactly what it is.
Yeah. It was great, and because he was just talking about how, and this is something that 5th year senior Christian College Steve wouldn't talk about. You're not going to get me like this very often, especially with not all these children around, which they are. But I was just saying, he was talking about the perfect amount of thick and blah blah blah, but it's it's really not sustainable. And he was just saying he's at this just this festival or whatever, and he's like, that's what's going on right now. There's a lot of girls who are COVID thick, and it's good, but not for long.
That's great. That's a good one to add to the vernacular.
COVID. I've not heard that. COVID thick.
COVID thick. I forgot to say, guys, you also can join our Subscribe Star now. You can get our supporting listeners group. You got a great Discord in there. I hopped in the voice chat this afternoon just before we got started. What was that?
There's a notable, very notable addition to the Subscribe Star today.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it's not the kind of person that's gonna go unnoticed. So.
Oh, very interesting.
Welcome to you, and you might be in the chat too. So hello.
I can't wait to see who it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look right now.
If you guys want to see who it was, then you can go to subscribestar.com/kingpilled, and that will get you in there. We've got 3 different tiers there. We've got some special stuff for you guys, depending on how much of your money you want to give us. And we appreciate you no matter what, but just understand that that if you give us a certain amount, then we are going to call you a peasant. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. So subscribestar.com/kingpilled. You can join our supporting listeners group. I'm very proud of you guys. We're at 4 dislikes already. You guys make me proud. We've got the best audience. Like they're thumbs downing our video without us even asking them to. I love it. If you guys could give us some more, that would be fantastic. There's 20 of you watching right now. We've got 7 likes and 4 dislikes. So if you guys could get that ratio worked out between yourselves, would appreciate that. And then share this as well. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I think
can I just say something last time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just about the supporting listeners group. That I scrolled through the meme Discord. There's like 6 that could probably get you deported if you used them. I mean, there's some really good memes. They're like they're really good. Yeah. No, I don't know. For me, that's just worth it. This isn't your father's meme thread. This is this meme thread does work.
And there was that one that you shared on Twitter the other day of the fat guy with the ANCAP flag with like hands off the big corporation. It's like that came from the meme thread. And there are some really excellent memes in there.
Wow, that's good.
Yep.
Well worth
some fantastic meme mavens.
Man, and I just I know that someone, because I know that on the last episode I said something about how I didn't think I would like Discord or thought I was too dumb to know how to use it or whatever, but I actually kind of enjoy it. There was someone else who echoed that. So if you're out there and you're thinking that Discord is some kind of newfangled technology that you don't want to be a part of, give it a shot. It's not bad. It's actually, I find it quite pleasant.
The voice chat is cool too.
Surprised. Yeah.
I've never used it before. I was using it on the computer because I was sitting here just eating some lunch, getting ready to start. So I haven't actually used it on the phone. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it was pretty slick. It's noise gated. So I noticed that I was sitting there and I was like eating food and bonking into my mic and stuff. But I noticed that I wasn't making any noise. So it's a small thing, but I'd kind of gotten this idea of like, I'm just going to be sitting there with my mic on, and do I have to like keep toggling it on and off? Nope. There's a little noise gate. So I'm gonna hop in that voice chat more often. There was Bruce was in there, and Jonathan, and then Nicholas popped in, but we didn't hear him say anything. So I guess he was just creeping. But they were talking about hunting and fishing and homesteading, and we've got serious people in this supporting listeners group. Yeah.
I should probably stay out of the voice chat if that's the case.
Well, you have stuff to contribute as well,
Oh yeah, wow! Sounds like you guys a whole bunch of the same people in my chat and my Discord as well.
I can talk about color coordinating.
Lots of overlap
while the men are out hunting.
Practicing group dances. Yeah, Poppies. I bet we have there's probably a significant overlap between yours and ours, but I guarantee that the people in yours are getting much more high quality, highbrow entertainment.
Oh yeah, I get they ask me questions every day, and I'm very responsive to these people because they're paying me money. And they get a lot of extra information about like what's coming, why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking, and what I'm what I'm planning, and that they're getting all sorts of really long explanations that people on Twitter just don't get. People on Twitter, they get like the one meme, where I'm kind of making fun of you for not knowing what I'm knowing, or not knowing what I know, and that's it. That's all you get on Twitter. But if you go in the Popular Liberty, Subscribestar, you will get long explanations about how things work and what's coming.
And believe me, the man has long explanations, and they are packed with information. Packed with information. Believe me, it's very worthwhile to read his breakdowns.
Hey, maybe one day they'll be super packed with information, right, Andrew?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. That unfortunately, my Achilles heel is bureaucracy, and I can't cut through it like that one knot, the Gordian knot.
Gordian knot, yeah.
Can't do that yet.
Soon, yeah.
Soon.
Matthew, I have to ask: do you ever get like a knot in your hair that you just kind of say, this just has to go, and everything below? You do like that
daily?
Probably. Okay,
not quite daily, but definitely. I mean, for the last year and a half, maybe I have a small handful of hair leave my head every time I wash my hair.
Yeah,
it creeped me out for a while. I was sure that I was going bald, but it seems to have kind of hit an equilibrium. But yeah, they get just massively tangled up. I found that the less that I shampoo them, the less they get tangled, though.
Right. Every once in a while, just like on this side or this side, there'll be like this like
a dread
Rat King sort of configuration of hair, and then like dead hair coming off of it, and I'm just like, I don't know where this came from. And I'll just try for a minute to brush, and you got to go. You got to go.
I don't know how you'll do the long hair thing. I can barely get it. This bit gets to be like a half inch. I'm like, okay, you got to go.
I got a half inch for you, buddy. Oh, mine not muted.
Giggity.
Okay. That and with my feminine features on my face, if I start growing long hair, this is not going to look good. I'm going to look like a lady boy.
You got to get this thing going too.
No. Unfortunately, it has patches everywhere, and they're very obvious. When I start to grow.
This is two things now I want to start a GoFundMe for. Now Andrew growing out his hair, because he made mention that he'd look like a lady boy, which I think we can all get behind that. And man, is there a number? I wanted to ask you before we get into stuff. This is dead ass, right? Can you talk to Jason and see if there is a number, if we crowdfunded it, that he would do an interview with Diamond and Silk?
Yeah, I'm sure there is a number.
There's always a number.
Yeah,
with Jason.
There's always a number. Oh yeah,
so,
for sure.
I mean, I went back and I listened to that just to make sure that it was real. But the idea of having Jason Stapleton talk with Diamond and Silk on the internet, like it hasn't left my head since we talked about it. And I know I'm not the only one. And I think we can rally enough support that we can see about putting something together.
That would be fun.
All right, you guys.
We need to know the goal.
You heard it here
in the chat. Can you tell?
Somebody organize it.
Yeah.
Somebody take the initiative and organize it.
Someone who isn't me.
I nominate Steven.
Blake says, I'm behind on the live stream, so this is a response to the MBTI chat. Ever heard about Colby A index? Considers individual instinctual behavior in an interesting format. No, I haven't. I'll look that up. Let me open this up in a new tab, and I'll check that out later. I've always been very interested in anything having to do with, I guess, like assessments of, IQ tests or like the ASVAB for the military or anything like that. I've always been very interested in, and seeing the distribution of responses, the distribution of how people break down, and I guess that's an extroverted sensing, introverted intuition characteristic is loving categories. Anybody who's either of those types, like Andrew, like you, I guarantee you that you look at the world in categories, and everything is broken down in categories, and then there's relationships between those categories. Yeah.
That's why I say when you guys start like getting high and you realize it's all connected, I'm like, yeah. It's like I don't have to be high to understand that. It's like that's how I think all the time. So when you guys get like high on those mushrooms and everything, you start thinking like me, and you're like, oh.
Well, when you do the mushrooms, it's not just stuff you're thinking; it's you actually see the connections.
Yeah, and you get to start thinking or seeing the way I think. Yeah, and it's like it's incredible. And but you see everything. I see everything in systems, and once if I don't understand it, it's because I don't have a system for it.
Right.
And so once I have a system, it's like, all right, now I can do everything I want with it.
Okay.
Don't get any ideas, Steve. I see that look on your face.
I'm just wondering what Matt's system is for transitioning into.
Did he just cut out through all of that? I mean, I'm sure it was a sick burn that would have hurt, but he just cut out through all of it.
he just tried to Rachel Tobias me, and the computer was not working with him.
Yeah. Sorry, better luck next time, Steve.
Oh, damn. Oh, you see, I thought Matt froze, and I thought I was just sitting here pretty, but no.
Maybe we all froze.
Yeah.
All right. So super awkward segue. We're 35 minutes in, so we can probably get to the subject matter. What were you going to say, Andrew?
Oh, I was about to say, speaking of things we owe to other people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. There's your segue. Speaking of things we owe to other people. So the post-nap libertarian question. Now, first of all, we fully recognize that going forward, we're very likely going to be known as the post-nap libertarians. We're not asking you to call us that necessarily. I don't really want you to call me anything except for my name, but I just understand how people think. I understand how things happen. This is kind of part of the whole moving beyond the libertarian 3x5 card of allowable opinion. And it part of that is understanding from maybe like a zoomed out perspective, understanding where cultural trends come from, basically understanding how a culture develops. So, Mark, you missed the best part. From here on out, it's not going to be worth listening to at all. If you want to actually if you want to actually enjoy the show, you got to go back and listen to the first
I wonder how destined we all were to come to this place. Because I remember for a while, I don't remember what year it was or when I first started doing it. I remember something I would say, just because I had the idea that, certain things were beginning to annoy me, and just the parts I couldn't quite vibe with, to put both feet in the water. But I remember routinely saying that two things that were overrated were the nap and trigger discipline. And I'm trying to remember just how far back that went, but it feels like that impulse was always there. Yeah.
So you felt like you've been ready to move beyond the nap for a long time.
Well, I remember when I first got into like libertarian groups on the internet, because the only time that I really remember the word libertarian was like that kind of my mentor in high school, talking about the stuff. And even his version of like what he said libertarian was, he said, it's the philosophy is basically stay out of my way. And so I completed it, and I'll stay out of yours. And he's like, just stay out of my way. And so that's what I thought it was, and like years and years later, like that, I can get behind that idea, just like stay out of my way.
Right.
And so then I got into these libertarian groups, a billion years later, and people start talking about natural rights. And I'm just like, hey guys, I like everything that's kind of going on here. Pretty sure rights don't exist though. So should I leave, or like, I'm pretty sure rights are made up.
It's a social construct.
I was just going to say rights are a social convention.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's a useful way to think, but it's like, okay, this is kind of a what do you call them? A heuristic or a shortcut?
Yeah. Heuristic.
It's a shortcut to the real thing. And speaking of the real thing.
So speaking of the real thing, I think I said something last week about slaying sacred cows, and this is one of those sacred cows. But I think that it's necessary for people to how do I say this? The other day, I think it was Adam Patrick or someone said something about like, do you have to go through libertarian to get to where we are? And I've answered that affirmatively for myself. I've answered that like confidently for myself, both directions multiple times now. So now I just kind of given up, and I don't know what the answer to the question is. But this is where I think perhaps if you've come through libertarianism, this is a useful frame to take. And what that is, what I'm trying to say here is if you've been able to conceptualize or understand the nap, if you've had that sort of reasoning, if you've gone through that reasoning with someone or someone's gone through it with you, if you've gotten to the point where you've understood that, and then you begin to understand what we're talking about today, I think you have a more fleshed out perspective. I think that there's perhaps there's something to say for that being a beneficial thing. So if you're going to get to like the king pill to the Praxian point of view, and you're going to do it without ever going through the libertarian theory route, I think you're probably worse off. It would probably behoove you to go back and to study the libertarian theory just so that you understand it, because it's very internally coherent, and from a theoretical perspective, it's phenomenal, and it's born out of, I think, a sincere desire to be a good person and to live in a world full of good people. The problem is that the way that it's conceptualized by libertarians, it doesn't port to the real world. This is where we say the libertarianism has no praxis as it currently exists. And to take it from how it currently exists and move it to something that does have a praxis, well, now you realize that the libertarian part of it is more just kind of like it's like a tchotchke kind of. It's like a philosophical tchotchke that's like, hey, that's pretty nice. That's cool to have that there, but I didn't need it in the first place. I could have just gotten to the praxis point and not use the libertarian part at all. So this is where I kind of reason myself to thinking, yeah, you don't need the libertarian route to get to the Praxian or king-pilled perspective.
Can I put in my big hope? I have a hope. It's very quick. My hope is that maybe almost primarily through the Tucker Carlson Yarvin interview, that a bunch of like, not MAGA, but like sort of maybe like good-hearted.
Oh, he's dying again.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, we lost him. But I think I know. I can complete his thought for him. That he wants a whole bunch of good-hearted constitutional conservatives to come here and start being interested in why that's going to be.
Yes. But I want them to definitely bypass libertarianism, and I want them to be kind of like chatty. They are kind of like men, and I want them to come in and just call everyone gay. You know what I mean? It's just immediately subjugate the former libertarians and stuff like that, and make them more
basically
aggressive.
You want them to retain their toxic masculinity and to lead with their toxic masculinity.
Yeah. Just be like, oh wait, so the Constitution is dead, and we're in the fourth regime and whatever. It's like, okay, so now what? Yeah. Oh God, if they could just get there, and then just someone just like, welcome to the club, Buster, and just stiff arm them, just like, the fuck out of here, you nerd. I mean, someone. Oh God, I'm sorry.
We're so glad that you showed up for our conference.
Yeah. My conference.
You ready to join the LP?
They would be, they would be former join the LP types, but you can't shake that. That ain't gonna leave forever.
I mean, this is kind of my big hope when Dave is out there spreading the message, introducing all of these normie cons to, these ideas for the first time. And they're going to, see it pretty quickly and realize, okay, this doesn't quite work. This doesn't port to reality. And I don't quite know why, but here's these guys over here who are giving a really great explanation of why. And so I'm just going to go join them because they seem like they have it really all figured out.
There's another really great thing is that, what I kind of realized this whole thing with the nap, it was just like, oh, you're trying to sort of intellectualize some kind of like morality mixed with your ideal version of the world here. And just like my theoretical Chad constitutional conservative reformed is just like, oh yeah, you mean like the golden rule? Like, what are you talking about? It's like, shut up. Like, the nap, nerd?
Yeah, I mean, it's the silver rule from the Bible.
They don't need it. They've got it covered.
That's what I'm saying. It's like once you have this broader perspective, then it's like, okay, well, it's valuable to have that part. Like that's useful. It's cool to have this little philosophical tchotchke, but it's kind of like, well, duh. It's like you went and you rationalized the why of the thing, but the thing itself is very obvious. Like, yes, we want people to not aggress against peaceful people. That's kind of like a very basic philosophical observation. And you
define aggressive people and peaceful.
Right.
Those are two very, very loaded words that people are not going to agree on.
Exactly. So once you understand the people, you recognize that the problem isn't coming up with the philosophically coherent justification for the society or for the structure of the society. The problem is dealing with the people who will never buy into that. And if if a large chunk of the society will never buy into the thing that by definition depends upon consensus to be applicable, then what are you doing? Like, sure, great. Yeah, you've got this principle that were you to persuade the entire planet to buy into your principle, everything would work out great. But this isn't how human societies develop. This isn't how they evolve. That's not how any of this works. I'm like the old lady with the Facebook commercial.
Like I've been saying, I'm not a huge. I think words are just supremely overrated. I mean, they cause such problems. They really do. They really do. And even
podcasters.
Even check it out. The aggression and stuff like that. My theoretical Chad constitutional conservative is probably just like, I'm going to probably bring around the kingdom of God. There might be a little bit of aggression, but it's kingdom of God. So here we are. There's a lot of talk about aggression on Liberty Twitter. I think people are almost calling for some kind of aggression. If you said, oh, you could kind of break out of this like COVID tyranny or whatever, where there's going to be a little bit of aggression, I think some people would probably sign up for that, if they had a guaranteed result. And so I think, again, basic bitch argument, libertarian argument would be, well, yeah, but the state and maybe you get one that admits corporations and whatever, are aggressing upon us and blah, 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 blah. It's only perspective. It is only perspective. Mm-hmm. You're like, there's any number of people, roughly half the population that think that you trying to prevent these measures is aggression.
Yes.
And that you are killing people by not facilitating an environment where more people are going to be safe and keep people from dying. So it's that I think, man, that I've been kind of making a list of just sort of thought experiments or just
they're like
libertarians need to go through to kind of realize that just I kind of want to tell people how to live too, or my definition of freedom is not everyone's definition of freedom. And even
think about it from the left's point of view as the unproductive people.
Not
and
possible,
now you're
buddy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No.
And I know that the libertarians, they're not good at understanding the left, why they are that way. And I had to use some really, high level autistic empathy to really understand where the left was coming from. But, if you understand that these are the nature's, predators, and you're saying, okay, now all the people who are specialized for predation, all of those people need to go get a productive job. It's this doesn't pay them. And they're at least 1/3 of society. And that's kind of being generous to all the other people. And because we understand that this thing kind of exists on a spectrum. And even the right has some predatory instincts, which, it's okay. It's if even the right has this, it's you want everybody to, live this peaceful way, which none of them want to do. And by the way, it's not peaceful as you define it's peaceful as they define, is how you define it, which is very, very different than what they mean by it.
Yeah.
And you're asking a whole bunch of people, this is the whole thing why I say, okay, the Praxian definition or the Praxian ideology is much superior, or I should say the post-NAP libertarians, because we understand, praxeology. It's the 1/3 of praxeology that libertarians kind of like to ignore and pretend doesn't exist. Of the, that 1/3 that is basically based on predation. And they like to pretend that's not there, because they're like, no, we are free market guys, and free market does not have that. So we're just going to ignore it, put it over there, sweep it under the rug, and pretend this thing doesn't exist. And it does, and it's here. And you're saying, okay, we're going to go win hearts and minds. And basically, if there are two kind of hacks you could have with reality. One is go and change hearts and minds by spreading beautiful ideas and lovely speeches, and or you could just pay them to change change their mind. It's you could do one or the other, and the left has kind of figured out the other, where we can just pay people to be evil and bad, and we don't need to convince you. We can either force, or we can pay you, and they understand that. Libertarians don't. And they don't understand either of those. And this thing exists, and we have to deal with it. And but anyway, as we were talking about the have to transition this to responsibility. How do we do that?
Before Nicholas, we transition, can I just ask, is there any possible way that we get sort of like a few people that we all know together and have a post-nap libertarian photo shoot where we bad boy style, where it's a post-nap libertarians, we just woke up and we're like stretching but we're flexing kind of.
A whole bunch of us are going to be in Texas like next month, so I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, Steven, what are you doing?
I'm imagining a world where I had money that would take me to Texas by almost any means of transportation that you can even think of.
We're going to start a GoFundMe.
Horse. I'm starting, man, I've started my own GoFundMe and it's just like on delay. Like I have been so busy editing videos for people, like the second that I said that I edit videos, that like I don't have time to think. But it's just, you have to go through the process of editing the video. And then,
well, if you go to, if you go to palomaverdecbd.com and you use promo code popular, that extra 20%,
how are you not
the
ready
reason
to
you,
him? It
actually goes to stuffing Steve in the trunk with Matt. So
yeah, hey, it's a way to get
they can be together. It's like if you use that promo code popular, we will stuff Steve in the trunk with Matt. All the way from California.
As long as we don't have to share a catheter.
It does sound like it would be a fun time. I will say that much. I mean, no, well, yeah, the catheter. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now for the transition. You've had time to work out the transition.
Okay. I was real quick. I was looking here on Subscribestar. You can have a goal, and I don't know if you can use the goal as kind of like a mini GoFundMe, or if the goal is just related to your like the monthly commits.
Diamond and Silk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, we can raise money for getting Diamond and Silk and Jason Stapleton together. And then secondarily, we can raise money for getting Steve to Texas.
Yeah. I mean, I used it to, put a goal there. Hey, convince my Chinese wife that this is making enough. This hobby of Andrew's is actually making money and he should be allowed to do it more often.
And it worked.
It actually works.
A good video editor. That's the GoFundMe. That's all we need. I'll be there. I'll get there.
So I want to say here, I want to make sure that even the people who listen to the audio later on, that they get to get this gem from Nicholas Blanchard. He said, the nap is a pristine pane of glass, which that's a good start, right? It's a pristine pane of glass that libertarians bring in only to have it immediately smashed to pieces. And the entire rest of the interaction revolves around picking up the mess. That's the problem here. The problem here, we aren't saying that the nap is worthless. We aren't saying that it's stupid or disgusting or ugly or nasty or anything like that.
We kind of are, but only sort of joking sometimes.
Right. Yeah. We're just saying that to trigger people. We're saying that to narrow down our audience and ensure that we only have the listeners that we want to have. What we're saying is that the nap is not sufficient. The nap is not sufficient. It's not fundamental. It's useful. It's good. It's nice to have around, but you need something more than that. And I want to read real quick something here that Andrew sent me a couple weeks ago when he and I first started discussing part of this subject. I don't remember. I remember how this started. You're the one who just straight up started the conversation. So you said the problem with self-ownership. This is Andrew talking. The problem with self-ownership is it assumes you're responsible for yourself. That's definitely not universally true. Therefore, self-ownership is as alienable as personal responsibility is. Natural rights can only exist if they're accompanied by natural responsibilities. That's the big takeaway. That's what you should, if you don't get anything else from this episode, that's the big takeaway. Natural rights can only exist if they're accompanied by natural responsibilities. Abdications of the latter are legitimate moral grounds for uses of minimal force against the former. So this is something that I've been trying to kind of get this idea out. In you guys, if you've listened for a while, you've probably heard me before do this thing where I talk about how you aren't born as an atomized individual. You're born into a networking. You're born into a network of individuals. That network of individuals is called your family. So you aren't born with no identity. You're born as a son, as a daughter. I
did not sign a contract to be anybody's. Sorry.
But this is the autism of libertarians. I didn't sign any social contract. I don't know any of you. I don't owe any of you a fucking thing. That's exactly where you just went wrong.
And there's where
can you imagine people who are that inherently likable having a difficult time getting people to go?
It's like, I don't owe you a fucking thing. Oh, but would you please sign on to my
natural rights idea?
Right.
No,
people are like, go fuck yourself.
Well, and what's funny about it is they use this idea of natural rights, which, by the way, they did not invent. And the inventors who did invent it, were all also, there's also this whole natural responsibilities thing over here too. They don't like to talk about that one. And they, and they say, okay, well, look, I'm born into nature, and in nature I would be able to speak, freely and not, be, smashed over the head for it, and so therefore I have a right to free speech. Well, actually, but they say that logic of, well, I was born into nature, and I have, and the way it would work in a state of nature. There's actually two sides to that. There's how it would actually work with the. With your rights, that is correct. Their logic there is correct. But there's also like, okay, you were born into, part of your nature is as a communal being. And, you weren't born out of nowhere. You weren't created, out of the head of Venus, not Venus, Athena. You weren't born out of the head of Athena. You were, like you had a mother and you had a father, and, you came out of like some woman's vagina. And you, like, it's like,
I was going to say you weren't born out of the head of Athena. You were born out of her vagina.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like, and it wasn't even Athena. It's like some, I'm not going to talk about your mother like that, Steve. Sorry. I'm kidding.
I mean, if you want to take your life, that's all you. I mean, I have nothing to do with it. You got to deal with her.
Yeah. But that's exactly right. It's like, okay, well, part of your nature is as a communal being, and you were born into that, and and actually you're going to have responsibilities because of that. And because you were born, they have responsibilities to you because of that. It's like, you didn't just come out of nowhere, and like your parents have a natural responsibility to you as like a 1-day-old baby to take care of you because you're helpless and alone otherwise, and there's no way you could possibly fend for yourself. Therefore, they must have an obligation to you to help you pay for that. And they're like, if your mother like, well, I didn't pay any, I didn't sign a contract with the baby, so that's like all on its own. Go be productive, little man. And you're like, and little Steve's like, but Mom, I don't know how graphic design yet. And granted, we're anthropomorphizing here, but right. I mean, it makes sense that obviously, because the parent has a natural obligation to that, and maybe when the parent gets really, really old and decrepit someday, which of course Steve's mother will never ever do, because I don't want to get killed, but it's like maybe she'll move in with the son, and he'll take care of her when she's too old to be productive anymore, because that's how that works. And if he doesn't do that, then he's a horrible, evil son, and he should probably lose some of his rights or be sold into slavery so that his mother can be compensated for that for that productivity that she put into him when he was a little baby, because that's natural responsibilities. And
I want to get on Poppy Lib's channel so I can say the S word on his channel.
Oh, we could do that. It's like, we totally do that. I don't mind saying the S word.
No, would be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And this has nothing to do with anything per usual, and I'm very sorry. But it would be kind of fun just to do a round robin of like a certain number of YouTube channels, and everybody just hosts, like 6-10 people or whatever, and we alternate channel to channel, and we just try to knock them off one at a time, and just see who the last man standing is, who has the last YouTube channel. God, that would be fun.
That's diabolical. I love it.
That would be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, really, like,
Steve, you're an evil genius.
Oh, God, I'm never gonna be able to stop thinking about that.
This is a really good point from Mark. He says, you're not even an individual to the institutions anymore. To the banks, you're your credit score. To academia, you're your GPA. Individualism is an outdated model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. When Andrew and I were talking about this before the show started, one way I guess we were kind of visualizing it is the libertarian perspective visualizes rights as something that everybody else owes them, but that's not how rights work. What when you're talking about rights, what those are what other people have a right to be treated by you. Rights flow from you out to other people in the form of responsibilities. And when you are true to your responsibilities to the society, and those responsibilities are not absolute, they can change. If you go to a different society, if you move into a different community, there may be different expectations for how you behave. And you can choose to flaunt those, but then by doing that, you're saying, I don't deserve community. I don't deserve to be part of this community, and they have every right to throw you out. So rights are ultimately they're a subjective they're a subjective social construct. Yeah, that word works fine.
Kinda.
Subjective social construct that's a product of consensus.
Yeah, mostly it's not consensus of ideas. It's a consensus of incentives. This is why, again, it's what pays people, not what people think. People don't care what you think. People don't care what anybody thinks. They care what pays them, and what actually gets the job done and helps them survive, because that's evolutionary behavior. If Darwinian behavior was, basically, this thing really is how it works, and maybe it shouldn't, but let's say if it didn't work that way, libertarians would be much better off. Because let's face it, as this is the thin libertarianism, as I kind of mentioned today, it always gives me this image in my head of like an emaciated Yemeni child, because it's like defenseless and it doesn't have nearly enough to food to be effective, and it's like shitting itself to death all over Twitter. And this, like, it gives a whole new meaning to the idea of shit libs. But no, it really gives me this idea of you're a half-formed ideology that's like starving to death, and this is what thin libertarianism is. It's not thin; it's emaciated. And it's like literally, think of it, a person who's like getting half their required caloric intake, they're going to be emaciated, and they're like dying. As like that's what you call dying and starving to death. And that's thin libertarianism, because it's missing this other half of natural responsibilities. And by the way, if you led with natural responsibilities as your messaging, you would be far more effective. And you know how we know? Because conservatives do the same exact thing. They don't do it very well, but they're still pretty effective. And you could be way more effective than they are. You could be like the super ultra conservatives who are really leading with natural responsibilities and understand every aspect of it. And that gives you a much better field leg to stand on. You're no longer this emaciated Yemeni child. You're now this North Carolinian, big muscular Chad. It's like you go from looking like John Hudak to looking like Steve Messina, and it's way better.
So someone clip that.
I know, right?
So are you saying thin libertarianism is COVID thick?
No, because it's by definition, it's not even that thick. That thick person has a caloric intake that exceeds their needs, so to speak.
The way that you can kind of, like, if you doubt this, if you're not seeing it, here's one way to think about this. So libertarians and lots of conservatives like to lead with freedom or liberty. I mean, they've literally defined themselves as liberty people, libertarians. Aryans. So from their perspective, so they talk about liberty. So they're like, okay, liberty. They have a definition of liberty that they're using, that they're operating from. If you listen to
I'm sorry. That just made me laugh too much. Oh my God. It's like, how does no one ever seen that before?
Libertarians.
It's like I could see the Huffington Post headline about the Mises Caucus now. Libertarians.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm very glad that. I'm very glad that. See, we had post-libertarian, we got post-nap libertarian. We just need something else to get libertarian out of there altogether. Just completely disassociate from it.
That's why I like the term praxian. It's like, okay, move over. It's like we're away from that word, so we're not using that Aryan word anymore. That isn't gonna, because this one's not gonna get us in trouble. Also, it has the X sound in the middle, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. So the when you're looking at, just take the generic neolib shitlib, they see all of these COVID lockdowns and mandatory vaccinations and vaccine passports. All of these measures are all about promoting liberty to them. And anybody who's not cooperating with these measures is aggressing upon them.
I just can't wait to be free again and go outside. And these anti-vaxxers are aggressing upon my right to be safe and healthy. I did my part.
Right.
And I deserve to be free.
There you go.
And it's like, so with all the fervor in the world that every libertarian believes in everything they believe, or anyone else,
And here's the thing. I'm not saying, Stephen's not saying that these people are right. We're saying that there's more of them, and they have the backing of every major powerful institution in the world. And that's not changing anytime soon.
They also have the backing of all of the incentives of society. So their model actually works really well. So even if you say that, oh, well, their model's wrong, well, their model works and yours doesn't. So
yes, exactly.
And you can't say that yours does because, let's face it, you're not in power. And you can say, well, the closer we get to my model, the more it works. And, it's like, well, I'm sorry. It's like, this is still their model. And it's just the other half of their model. Yours is incomplete. And you're saying we should only have half the model. And so, and frankly, the closer we get to your model on the other side, the less it works actually, where you say, oh, I actually don't have any responsibilities to my friends, family, and community. That works really poorly. We know how that works out. That's a shitty idea. And that is really, really destructive. So and let's face it, this is like the whole reason our civilization is in the mess it is right now is because we have very weak men who are not taking the proper level of responsibility.
Yes,
so it's like
masculine men. That's the kind of man that you need, is a strong masculine man. Maybe looks good in a suit. And likes to work things out while talking in front of big groups of people. A man's man.
So yeah, it's like you have to understand there's two sides to how your system works. And one side of it actually works pretty decently well. The other side is like pretty horrifying and is kind of what led us to where we are right now with the idea of nobody's responsible. So it's like, okay, you can't have it both ways. You either accept that natural responsibilities are the way to go and that you need both in order to have a really good, productive libertarian society, or you deny it and you reach the status quo. Remember, I always like to say, descriptions of anarchy are usually descriptions of the status quo because it's the same. The state is not the problem. The incentives that led to the state are the problem. And you trying to just say entity bad is like, this is not helpful. This is not doing anything. And what you actually need to say is that those incentives right there are bad, and we need to figure out a way to correct them. And that's going to take some engineering.
This is like, let me see if I can find the quote from Moldbug, because he has a absolutely brilliant conceptualization of this. It's incredibly memorable. It's a fantastic visual, and I'm just trying to buy some time here so that I can find it.
Can you imagine Diamond and Silk on Jason Stapleton? I mean, how much hitting on Jason would happen? Like more than if I was on Jason's show, because I would be tongue tied and nervous. They would just be like, "Ooh, he looked like Matthew McConaughey went to the gym. Ooh, Matthew McConaughey a Marine now.
Ooh, I'm gonna get me some recon Marine tonight." Or something like that.
I'm gonna get me some recon Marine.
Oh, I'm gonna recon that Marine.
Okay, I think I've got it here. Where do I start this?
Aren't you glad that Jace does not watch this? Usually,
I think he does sometimes.
I feel like Jace is gonna just get a check in the mail, and it's gonna just have because someone's gonna know the dollar amount. Like even before Jace does, like Amy knows what the dollar amount is, and we'll just add like $10 to it, so it's a no-brainer. And then it's gonna be a check, and then the memo is gonna say, "All right, Diamond and Silk are booked at this date for 45 minutes." And that's it.
Well, we know what 40. Yeah, we do know those numbers of what 45 minutes of his time is worth. So
that's
or at least one of us does. So it's like we know the amount we have to get to. So
it's a 1 hour minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found the spot that I'm looking for here, and I think the best spot to start from is let's start here. So. He says, in short, the 800-pound gorilla is on acid. No wonder the Night Watchman state seems like such a tempting idea. The Carlylean, so someone following Carlyle, Carlylean insists the forces of sovereignty must be mastered. There is no alternative. To limit the state to what it should do, prohibiting it from doing what it should not do, is to commit an act of tautology. Suppose you make it promise. What use are the 800-pound gorilla's promises? Either you have mastered him or not. If not, he will do as he likes. If so, you have taken his place. Observe the fascist or socialist state again through the eyes of the orthodox libertarian or classical liberal. We see an 800-pound gorilla on acid whooping it up at the wheel of a running bulldozer. Your libertarian says, stop that bulldozer. Your Carlylean says, stop that gorilla. A bulldozer, well-made, well-maintained, and well-operated, is a positive force in the world, but only if it is driven by a man and not a gorilla. If you saw a bulldozer driven by a qualified bulldozer operator, dear libertarian, would you cry, stop that bulldozer? I think not. You might be amazed at all the good works a qualified bulldozer operator can work with a bulldozer. Of course, the world at present contains no such thing as a qualified bulldozer operator, which is hardly the Carlyleans' fault, and it still contains men who are not gorillas and can learn. They can also be drug tested. But this analogy, though picturesque, is as far as we can go with the two together. Socialism and fascism are different things. We must examine them apart, each through the Carlylean lens, and so on. So that's from the his From Mises to Carlyle series. That analogy, the first time I read that, I was like, this is the mass. Like, he could have contributed nothing else to the world, but for these analogies that Moldbug has, like, he is valuable just for them alone. This conceptualization of it, an 800-pound gorilla on acid whooping it up at the wheel of a running bulldozer. The libertarian says, stop that bulldozer. And the Carlylean says, stop that gorilla. That distinction right there, that's it. If your goal, if your goal is to stop the bulldozer, you're gonna lose. You have to stop the gorilla because there's always going to be a bulldozer. The question is, who is driving the bulldozer? And if you want your values in the world, if you want them respected, if you want a world where property rights are enforced, if that's your goal, which is ostensibly why you would get involved in politics, why you would try to spread libertarianism, why you would try to do all these things, would be because you want to see your values expressed in the world, then the way to get them expressed is to associate the ideas with powerful people. The rest of the world follows powerful people. If you want them to follow your values, then your values need to be associated with powerful people. How do you get powerful? By fulfilling your responsibilities.
Fulfilling your incentives.
Right. Yeah, you are incentivized toward your responsibilities, because when you fulfill your responsibilities, when you pursue the incentives that are in front of you, which are going to be directed by empathy, they have to be led by empathy, because ultimately your incentive is to have a society that wants you around, because your life depends upon it. So if you want to participate in the rest of the market, you need to be bringing something of value that other people want. Not just something that you value, something that other people value. The reason that nobody wants liberty as conceptualized by libertarians is because it's coming from really unpalatable people. It's coming from people who don't bring anything to the table that anybody else wants. That's why nobody wants the ideas.
It's a null value.
Yes.
It's like you're bringing zero to the table. You're not bringing negative to the table. You're bringing zero to the table. And right now they have like something and it's kind of crappy.
I think they're bringing zero to the table because not only are they bringing a null value, but they're doing it in an antisocial manner. They're doing it in a way that turns people off.
Yeah.
So the idea is bad and the method of bringing the idea forward is bad. They're both bad. This is when I've gotten into these conversations about the Mises Caucus, and I can tell that people think that we're moving goalposts around. No, it's not that we're moving goalposts around. It's that there's so many fucking goalposts. Yeah, the whole thing is just full of problems. You solve
like you're
one,
missing half the picture. Right. It's like no wonder there's so many criticisms that you're missing half the picture. And literally, and like, you talk about fulfilling your responsibilities, and that's what gives you power. The reason it gives you power is that your responsibilities are based on human incentives, and incentives means it pays you. So when you're fulfilling that, it means you're getting paid for it. That's wealth, power, and influence.
Yes.
Right there. That, that right there is how, fulfilling your incentives, fulfilling your responsibilities is how you get wealth. Wealth is power. And this is what, and by the way, you mentioned these, the LP types, who are like, well, we're putting in so much principle, which is so valuable. It's like, no, it's not valuable. It's like value is subjective. You're making that. It's like, for a bunch of libertarians, you would think they would understand not to make the labor theory of value fallacy. Where we're putting in such good labor and, that's so, worthwhile and costly. And no, that is not how value works. It's like the fact nobody else values that means it's not valuable. And, and you should really ask yourself the question, why? It's like, and what do they get paid for it? And who are all the groups who get paid? Who are the ones who lose out? And really focus on the ones who lose out, because they're the important ones, because that's exactly who, all the people with power who have it right now. You're saying, okay, all of those people need to voluntarily give up a thing that pays them. They need to all go to zero. And it's like, I'm sorry, nobody has that incentive to do that. And, and you're going to need a shit ton of force to override that. And you do not have that amount. And by the way, I really want to recommend, do not use violence against the government or their adjacent iron polygon entities. Whoever the other vertices are on the iron polygon, do not use any force against them. This is bad. This will not work out well for you. And some libertarian types who do not understand that. And I'm specifically talking about like one or two like LPMC people that have kind of said stuff like that. I'm like, you are fucking retarded. I'm not going to name names, but it's only a handful of them. It's not, definitely not emblematic of, or not, definitely not, they're not a representative bunch, but there's a few of them in there that I'm like, buddy, you're going to get the entire group in trouble. And I don't want to see that. It's like, I'm not an LP guy. I'm not a Mises Caucus guy, but I don't want these guys put in jail. It's like that, and having the entire organization Proud Boys, that would be really, really, really bad.
Did we ever segue?
Yeah, we did.
To the original one?
Okay.
I think we did. Yeah. I just opened up Twitter to find something I tweeted earlier and just saw the perfect two tweets that address exactly what we're talking about. First of all, Cyprian says, in the absence of the state, this is something that I tweeted at Ace yesterday, that in the absence of the state, there is no legitimate ownership of property. Determining legitimate ownership is the primary function of the state in the first place. And libertarians will hear that and they'll no, the state can't do anything legitimately. We're not advocating for this position. We're describing a fact of reality. You're making a counterclaim. The veracity of your claim is dependent upon your ability to enforce it. That's just the nature of this sort of claim. Adam Patrick quote tweeted it and said, exactly. Every other claim is simply that, a claim, which is fine. You can claim whatever you want, but it is what it is. And you're left to defend said claim on the merit you ascribe to it. There's this conversation going on right now about grocery store owners being able to deprive people who aren't masked or whatever. And it's always about property rights and people are free to kick whoever they want off of wherever. And this is a broken model. This model hasn't been effective for, centuries. It hasn't been applicable for forever. There is no The store owner is not a property owner. We call him a property owner colloquially, but he doesn't hold primary sovereignty over that property. He's not the ultimate enforcer of the law on his property. Ultimately, there is another entity that will make a higher claim and will overrule him 100% of the time that it decides to. You cannot remove that reality. That reality exists. You can adapt to it. You can recognize that it exists and work within that context.
There's a pretty easy metaphor for this that is just not YouTube friendly at all. But
just do it in code.
It's no.
Rhyme it.
All right. Okay. So the part of the part of nature that when Andrew was talking about nature, living in nature, what my mind always runs to is like, well, what if Buck Johnson's evil twin runs up to you in nature and tells you that you don't have rights anymore?
I'd believe him.
That
guy's huge.
Because right. And so anything in terms of how a society function is sort of predicated upon sort of Buck Johnson, you treating Buck Johnson's evil twin like he's someone who could take your rights away, because ultimately he could, because although we've intellectualized a lot of stuff, we're monkeys. And if Buck Johnson's evil twin wanted to take your rights away, he could. Yeah. And so it's just like like the entity that has like the final say over that, that the person's store or whatever. That entity is just kind of exists in a way where it's just like, yeah, and I know that I have final say over your store. It's like it's the same thing like when Obama made the joke about like drone bombing someone. If it was some casual thing, I kind of forgot what it was. Do you know what I'm talking about though?
Vaguely.
It was maybe someone taking out his daughter and 2 words, predator drones or something like that.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking
about? That rings a bell. I don't remember.
Like, yeah. I remember that now.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but like that's it right there. Like,
what would happen if he messes with his daughter? It's like 2 words, predator drones.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that just exists in nature. That's how life is. So the way that you behave, like even as you'll notice, as men, you notice how you might talk to someone a little bit different than you talk to someone else. There's certain things that
woman, get me a sandwich. Like I never say, Matt, get me a sandwich. It's like, that's not going to work.
I'll just go to Subway or something.
Wait, you'd actually do that for me? I was joking.
Of course.
Like,
I'm a good friend.
Okay.
You would owe me in the future though.
Okay, yeah, I would.
Joshua says
that's a responsibility. Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, I know you the favor.
This is the power of empathy. This is when you begin leading with empathy. We're making jokes about it, but it's true. When you lead with so Poppy says, Matt, could you go get me a sandwich? Yeah, man, I'll go get you a sandwich. Now I know that in the future, this is just a fact of just a reality that in the future, if I ask something of him, he is much more likely to do it for me. By leading with empathy, by seeing the world through someone's eyes, and by fulfilling a demand for them proactively, you create almost like gravity coming, like you increase your gravitational force, that you begin pulling rights back from them in the form of them being obligated to you because you put yourself in a position where they would be obligated to you.
Yeah, that's what incentives do. They're gravitational.
Yes.
They make, then this is why everyone wants to give welfare to the rich people instead of the poor people.
Yes. Right. Because there's that latent,
that's exactly how it works.
That's that latent natural instinct. Joshua Ham says, if you have property taxes, then you're not a property owner. You're just leasing. Stop paying property taxes and you'll find out real quick who actually controls your land. This is the libertarian non-aggression principle, property rights, positive, negative rights. That whole perspective is all on the surface. You haven't gotten down into the meat of where the society moves. You're dealing entirely in the abstract theoretical world. You're rationalizing out things that already exist.
Constitutional conservatives. Constitutional conservatives have no problem understanding that concept.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Whatever that's worth.
Right. The ones, the what are they? The blood-soaked monsters? But they're the ones who understand reciprocity. They get it. Because this is where libertarianism genuinely has an autism problem. It's just overwhelmingly the people who are inclined toward that sort of worldview are going to be people who don't naturally get along well with others in social situations. That's what the worldview is going to evolve from that. And it's going to overwhelmingly appeal to people like that. So it needs people who understand people, who understand culture, to troubleshoot the worldview and update it. And that's what we're here to do. That we're here. This is only going to appeal to people who are already inclined to agree with us, which is what I'm always trying to do anyways. But
Matthew, how dare you?
We're here to de-autistic the libertarian worldview, to update it and make it actually functional for society, because there's this perception that we don't care about it or that we're trying to get rid of it. No, we're trying to port it to the real world, and we're dealing with that problem between the theoretical and the real.
Like, King Pilled is to, libertarians what How to Win Friends and Influence People is to autism.
Yeah. Yes.
And and speaking of those constitutional conservatives and, the blood-soaked monsters, it's really highly ironic that, you get that one from the LP, which, itself is full of blood-soaked monsters who are soaked in baby blood. Yes. of all the millions of abortions that they've approved of in their party platform. Right. Yeah, whereas at least the conservatives, they had to be deceived in order to get them to go to war. It's like they didn't do that willingly. They did that under false pretenses, and when they figured out that they had been deceived, they got pissed, and they. That Bush had like a 26% approval rating, and he was not, and they hate him now. And they threw all the neoconservatives out of the party, threw them out of power, and they hate them now because it's like you humiliated them and sent them to war and to kill millions of people under false pretenses. And, it's like the humiliation of that is like, they're never going to forgive you for that, at least not in this generation. And it's going to be a while before before the next generations can forget about that sort of insult. And, they're never going to trust, this war propaganda again. But again, they killed people under, the conservatives, the constitutional conservatives, they killed people under false pretenses. They didn't know what they were doing. They were deceived. Whereas the Libertarian Party, there was no deception. They've been killing babies for 60 years to the tune of like tens of millions. So I don't really want to hear from the LP about how the GOP is full of blood-soaked monsters. You've got plenty of blood on your hands, assholes.
Beautiful.
And but again, and the constitutional conservatives, to their credit, they understand that this is their responsibility. They're not accountable for all those babies that the LP approves of killing, but they still understand that this is their responsibility to end it and minimize it as much as they can within the confines of the law, which understandably they're kind of confined here because the courts have a nasty habit of overturning a lot of these laws that conservatives try to be very creative in coming up with. I mean, they're not quite as creative as they could be, but I don't blame them for that. They don't have that diabolical instinct that I do. So they've really taken that as their responsibility to end, all of the baby killing that, the LP is so approving of. And I understand that there's a pro-life, movement within the LP, very, very, very small, but hey, there is a much bigger pro-life movement within the GOP, and and the GOP doesn't want to go to war. It's like they had to be deceived into it because, like, literally, it's their kids who are going to go get shot at. It's like no one wants their kid to go get shot at. And if you had a little bit of empathy, you would understand that about them, but they don't. And they still call them blood-suck monsters, which is just the autistic way of saying, like, it's like, tell me you're autistic without telling me that you're autistic.
You could see this more clearly than ever in their perspective toward the idea of GOP people working with them. I've seen them explicitly say this. This is like LPMC people will explicitly say, if Republicans or conservatives want to work with us politically, then they're going to have to renounce all of their support for war and all of that. And I'm like, who the hell do you think you are to be to think you have a ring to make people kiss. You're the one who needs them. They don't need you. They don't need your autism. It doesn't do anything for them. You're the one who needs their support if your ideas are ever going to come anywhere remotely close to the rest of the society, the rest of the culture. There's this tendency within the libertarian mind to just, because they're viewing the world entirely on the level of theory, they're entirely in the abstract. There isn't like any sense of trajectory or any like recognition of the fact that we're going somewhere. And each situation that you encounter isn't exactly like the last one. So you can't develop a just like a general heuristic that you could just throw at any sort of situation and make it work, except for very, very few narrow, like incredibly zoomed out ones. You have to take each situation within the context that it presents itself to you. So 25 years ago, someone in some town somewhere deciding, oh, I only want to serve specific people at my business. That's an entirely different phenomenon than today. Every business in an entire city all cooperating to block out specific categories of the population. That's a completely different thing. Now you have a bunch of people who are forsaking their responsibility to their community. If you don't recognize that, there's no hope for you. If you don't recognize that people blocking other people off from buying groceries because they haven't partaken in a pharmaceutical experiment, if you don't recognize that that's an abandonment of responsibility, there's no hope for you. This is a pandemic of abandoned responsibilities. And it's getting worse and worse. There's this tweet here that Clint from Liberty Lockdown, he said, someone said, if a business wants me to get vaccinated to shop there, then I'm not going to shop there. Don't give your money to shitty businesses. And he said, just get a new restaurant, bro. It's the entire city. Just move, bro. State travel requires V-Pass. Just fly, bro. Air travel requires V-Pass. Private property, bro. My principles. Thrown in gulag. And this analogy, someone replied to him and he said, glad someone else gets it. So many people just keep moving goalposts. Well, I won't go there. Well, I'll find another job. Well, I won't work. I'll find a new place to live. People keep raising their own totalitarian debt ceiling, and eventually it's going to get people put on trains. That was the best tweet that I've seen. Shout out to @AFC_Angelo, because that was brilliant. Your own totalitarian debt ceiling. You have to have an understanding of how societies, how cultures function together. And this one right here is getting completely toxic and cancerous. It's
totalitarian
devolving.
Debt ceiling. That's a really good term. I'm
Isn't
going to
it?
use that. That's a really excellent term. And Clint, are you done? I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, because Clint had another really good revelation in that tweet debate, which was hard to follow because they kept retweeting each other, as like Ace always does that, and it's kind of annoying. But it's like I understand why he does that, but
it's because he's talking to his followers and not to
exactly.
People, yeah.
But it's like I get it, but it makes it hard to follow anyway. But somewhere in that tweet debate, Clint made an excellent point about how again, because Ace is coming at this from the ethical point of view of what not to do, which is kind of it's a consequence of higher level morality, because ethics always descend from morality, and it's a one-way street. Like ethics does not tell you anything about higher level morality. And what Clint had realized, and he actually wrote this out. I forget how his exact wording was, but he's like, this is not morality. And there is a problem there that where I can respond to aggression, with aggression, because this is immoral. And he had all by himself figured out the difference between like morality and ethics is that, actually there's a whole other set of ethics that libertarians don't like to talk about, which is based on the morality. This is why, again, I say this is an incomplete philosophy. Thin libertarianism is half complete. It's half the picture. And, you need the other side, which has responsibilities in it. And if you understand that, in the 21st century, we live in a Christian, it's a Christian morality system, which is, and that all Christian morality is based on our concept of love. So when you understand that, okay, it's kind of a I did this diagram in the Praxian. All of you are just going to have to imagine it for right now. But, it's basically it's a reciprocal trade between two people and the love in between them, which is its own entity. But if you just take it as, okay, here's the other side is, you owe these responsibilities to them and they owe these responsibilities to you. And what this actually gives you is a picture, and has all of these 6 or 7 characteristics in it that I enumerated. And, and again, in the Praxian, but one of them is the most important one, which is the voluntary aspect, which basically guarantees all of the other aspects. And they've kind of honed in on that one characteristic of love and said, this is the one we're going to create all of our ethics around. It's like, well, no, because there's a whole bunch of other characteristics there that are also important. And you can't just take the one and divorce it from all the others. And worse is that you've taken out half the picture too, as the other person. Well, what do you owe to them? Is like, well, all I owe them is not to violate their rights. It's like, no, you actually owe them quite a lot more than that. Yes. And, this is something, again, I did on the diagram. You guys are all just going to have to imagine it for right now. But, because, we have this, central morality system of Christian love, which is different than the secular version of love. Because that is actually the prime value. That's the one at the top. That's God. God is your top value. And again, God is love. And this is, again, the genius of Christianity. Okay, so if everything descends from if all morality at least in our 21st century is based on the characteristics of love, so anything you do that is contrary to love, should be an ethical violation. And what libertarians have done is they said, nope, the only one that is contrary to love is voluntary, and that's the only one we care about. Which, okay, it's arguably the most important aspect of it, but at the same time, it's not the only one. And because you're missing everything else, he's been able to derive that, okay, this is wrong because it is this denying people the right to buy groceries is wrong because it is contrary to love. And this is something that actively decreases the amount of love. This is an aggression against, or transgression really, against the laws of love or against the characteristics of love. And your ethics system should be ideally developed around all of the characteristics of love, not just one of them. But he's been able to figure that out, and without really understanding why that this is wrong. I can't quite figure out why it's wrong, but it is. And because it's contrary to these other characteristics of love, and that a full and complete ethical system would be based around. We don't have that, but the ideal is actually quite a lot different than what the libertarian. It's quite a lot richer and fuller, and has a lot more characteristics to it than what the libertarians have. And and again, it just shows that thin libertarianism is thin because it's incomplete. It's emaciated. It's not just thin; it's emaciated. It's to the point of starving to death. It's it's thin to the point of starving to death because it's the Yemeni child imagery.
The great point here from Joshua Ham. He says, good politicians are indistinguishable from good fathers. You should be protecting your constituents from the depravities of bullies who want to enslave your children. This is a mentality that I see in libertarians, I guess, liberty-minded people. They tend to have a very much like a peanut gallery approach to these sorts of things. That well, I'm the one who has all the answers, but nobody will listen to me. So I'm just going to sit here in my castle up here, just sending down pot shots, pointing out where everybody else is wrong. And if everyone would just listen to me, then everything would be fine. But nobody wants to. So if they want to be on my team, well, they need to repent of all the things that they've done wrong. This mentality is just completely. It's horse shit. It's completely uncalled for, and it'll never get you anywhere. Your perspective, if you care about liberty, you need to view this as your responsibility to bring these values to the people whose rights are being violated. The people for whom nobody else is being responsible, it's your responsibility to be responsible for them. You need to bring responsibility to the world. Lead by example, lead by solving problems for other people, lead by bringing value to the world, and using the increasing wealth, power, and influence that you get to create more responsibility in the world. Ultimately, the role of a politician is just the role of the father figure to the tribe. It's the patriarch of the group. And we have different evolving social structures, but in every social structure, there's going to be a patriarch. There's going to be that father figure who steps in other situations and ensures that people are treating each other well. So in this case, when Ron DeSantis bans private vaccine passports, because he's not evaluating the situation in a vacuum. He's not just like, in one single hypothetical circumstance, were someone to hypothetically create a vaccine passport and hypothetically prevent a person from partaking in that institution if they don't have that vaccine passport, does that violate this arbitrary rule or not? He's recognizing the dynamic of what's happening here. What's happening is I guess I have to be kind of careful with the way that I talk about this. What's happening is and I'll just say there's a shadowy cabal that is using the good intentions of naive and ignorant people. It's weaponizing them to create a lower class that is not permitted to participate in the rest of the society.
I like the
dynamic that's a bad dynamic. That's not something that you want to persist. That if you allow something like that to persist, it's going to take the society away from liberty as libertarians conceive of it, not toward it. So if you're endorsing that, or you're promoting it, or you're excusing it, you are actively participating in something that takes society away from liberty. And what do you call someone who participates in taking the society away from liberty?
A leftist.
Bingo.
But I like the way Tho Bishop said it on Twitter today. He had something to the effect of, let's create a lower caste full of people who only believe in property rights, and that'll show the people in power who's in charge.
That's fantastic.
That'll show them who's boss.
That's great.
It's like, fill this entire cast with people who believe, this entire bottom cast of society with people who believe in property rights. These are the untouchables, it's like, forget Visayas. Like, you've created a new class of untouchables. Like, or the deplorables, that it is a real cast now, and they're not even allowed to buy groceries. So it's like, and sure, that's showing them who's boss. And for some perverse, really is perverse, because you've taken one thing and given it a very outsized influence that it is not supposed to have.
Yeah,
you took one characteristic of love, the voluntary nature of it, and you've given it this, you've elevated it to the point where you've excluded all of the other characteristics that are equally important, if not more so. And
right.
And so and by doing that, and now you say, like, all the people who believe that, now they're all going to be at the bottom where they have no power, no influence, and they might be starving to death. Good job. This is not, as begun because you tried to do, you took, you took love in the wrong way. You took one characteristic in the wrong way, and to a very wrong degree. That is not the degree it was meant to have. And
that right there is actually a characteristic of the spirit of Antichrist.
This is the idea of
version of, exactly. It's missing the mark.
Again, the mark is love. So, like, anything that misses the mark is, of love. If you understand what this concept is, it's like, okay, anything that isn't that is sin. That's missing the mark. The bullseye is love. So you need a Christian love, not just secular love, Christian love, which is very different. And you understand that okay, that's the mark. So anything that is either contrary to it, which is like really an injustice, that's what we call injustice, something that actually is contrary to it, not just something that isn't it. It can be a neutral thing. It's not love, but something contrary really is not love. So it's two different degrees there, and we saw one is called a vice, which is kind of the neutral thing, where it's like it's missing a characteristic, or it's like something's taken out of it that is that's taken to a degree it's not supposed to be at, or to a degree it's or to a much lesser degree that it's supposed to have. And and that's one way of missing the mark, something that's actually contrary to love, that decreases it in society. This that is something, that's what we call an injustice. And that's what we can punish, the latter pretty easily. Like, don't murder someone. That obviously decreases the amount of love in society, because you've decreased the number of people. Duh. But the and we can punish that really easily in the ethical system. Something like a vice is a little bit more different, because it's like, okay, you've taken a drug in more than its moderation quantity, because part of love is being moderate. It has a moderation aspect of it. It's this cardinal virtue of temperance, which means going exactly the right distance and no further. And it's different from teetotalism, which means total abstaining. That's not what that is. That's not, when we say moderation, we're not talking about abstinence. We're talking about going the right distance and no further. And this is something C.S. Lewis talks about. That's in his Mere Christianity, which is a really, really excellent book for anyone who wants to understand how morality actually works in our 21st century. And you can see from its nature why libertarianism as an ethic is so incomplete. And it actually does. We need a thick libertarianism, COVID thick, and you need something that's like a little more muscular and lean. It looks like it works out, and that's like Praxianism or paleo libertarianism, and and that you don't want quite a wealth power influence, because those guys are fat fucks. They never met a liberty calorie they didn't want to eat. I'm kidding.
All right, well, we gotta get wrapped up here because all of us have to go. I'm gonna be on the Catholic Libertarian podcast. Shout out Caleb in the chat. In about half an hour here, I think it's about at 4:30 Pacific time or 7:30 fake time. I'm going to be on the Catholic Libertarian podcast. We're going to be talking about Hans Hermann Hoppe's A Short History of Man. So that should be a really interesting conversation.
It is so good.
It's so good.
How much I like it.
It's so good. Yeah.
Great.
Steve, do you have any last thoughts?
Now my battery's going to die. I thought it was going to die at a really hilarious time, but
it'd be perfect if it just dropped out right now.
I was trying to set it up to do that, but it didn't.
Well, I will just leave you guys with Joshua Hamm. He had another fantastic point here. He said, I make my children brush their teeth and go to church. They don't have an option. It's not voluntary. I don't let my wife talk shit about herself. Love is not simply constrained by voluntary choices.
Bingo. Joshua is absolutely, great. I've met him in person. The dude is excellent, super based, and he's going to be running for Senate in Texas. I don't know if he has a fundraiser account set up anywhere. State Senate in Texas, and he's got some backing. It's like this guy can, he's a first-time candidate, but he's talented, and he has the right mentality of how to, talk to people and talk to the right particularly. And he's got a decent chance of winning his primary. So y'all go donate to him. I don't know if he has a link anywhere, but he should leave it in the comments section for sure.
If you have a link or anything, Joshua, then just send it to me and I'll tweet it out. But yeah, this has been a good conversation. I've enjoyed it. Maybe we should do an episode on what love is, what Christian love is sometime.
Yes. Oh, we will definitely will. You and I definitely will.
Oh, I actually had a brilliant insight into that. That's one thing I can definitely talk about.
Take care, Steve.
See you guys. Real quick, PalomaVerdeCBD.com, promo code KING, subscribestar.com/KingPilled. And follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Follow Steven on Twitter at Messina Inc. Poppy Libs, you want to get any?
Yep. Subscribestar /Popular Liberty. And, you can get into my user group for very, very, very cheap and get a lot of the extra explanations about how all this stuff works, in great long detail. And you can also find me at Popular Liberty _ on Twitter. So hit me up there.
All righty.
But also definitely hit me up on Subscribestar because I need money. Help me stop being poor.
Yeah, same here. And Joshua, perhaps he said it's State House. So perhaps I'll be able to.
Oh, State House. I thought it was State Senate. My bad.
There's the possibility that I'll be able to vote for you here, depending on when it happens and where it is. But anyways, we'll see you next time, guys. We'll see you on Monday. And yeah, talk to you then.